My name is Johanna, and at 32 years old, I thought I had seen every type of corporate politics during my career as an events manager at Horizon Technologies. But nothing prepared me for that morning. After 6 months planning the Tech Vision Summit, I arrived early, confident, and excited. The security guard scanned my ID, frowned, and said, "You're not on the attendee list." Before I could respond, I saw Marcus, my colleague, standing nearby with a smirk. "Last-minute decision from management," he said casually. "Before I tell you how I handled this betrayal, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with workplace sabotage." I promise what happened next changed everything. I had spent 8 years climbing the corporate ladder in event planning before landing my position at Horizon Technologies. My reputation for turning chaotic events into seamless experiences had earned me a promotion to Senior Events Manager just 6 months prior to the Tech Vision Summit. This wasn't just any corporate gathering. It was the premier technology conference in our industry, attracting thousands of attendees, dozens of high-profile speakers, and media coverage that could make or break a company's public image. Horizon Technologies wasn't just any workplace either. From day one, I noticed the competitive atmosphere where information was currency and relationships were tactical. Everyone dressed impeccably, spoke carefully, and watched their backs. I tried to stay above the politics, focusing instead on results, but it wasn't always easy. There were a few people who made navigating this environment bearable. Rachel from HR became my closest ally, a straight-talking woman who had been with the company for 15 years and knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. "Watch out for Marcus," she warned me during my first week. "He's charming to your face, but will steal your ideas the minute you turn around." Marcus Palmer was my counterpart in the marketing department, though his actual contributions were often hard to identify. Tall, always dressed in designer suits with perfectly styled hair, he moved through the office with the confidence of someone who knew he'd never face consequences for his actions. He had a talent for inserting himself into successful projects at the last minute, and somehow receiving credit when things went well. My direct supervisor, Diana Williams, initially seemed supportive. She had a calm demeanor and analytical mind that made her excellent at budgeting and resource allocation. In our early meetings about the Tech Vision Summit, she championed my ideas to upper management and gave me the autonomy I needed to succeed. Everything changed when Victor Reeves joined the company as the new vice president of marketing. He came from our biggest competitor, Nexus Innovations, bringing with him aggressive tactics and a reputation for ruthlessness. Diana began canceling our one-on-one meetings, claiming she was busy helping Victor transition into his role. The Tech Vision Summit had a troubled history. The previous year's event before I joined Horizon had been plagued with problems, scheduling conflicts, technical failures, and a keynote speaker who never showed up. Attendee feedback had been brutal, and several major clients had publicly criticized the company on social media. Our stock price had actually dropped 5% the week following the conference. When I was assigned to lead this year's summit, I understood the subtext: "Fix this, or your career at Horizon might be short-lived." The pressure was immense, but I saw it as an opportunity to prove myself. With a documented history of failure, any improvement would shine even brighter. The first challenge was securing an adequate budget. I prepared a detailed proposal breaking down costs and projecting returns on investment. In the budget meeting, I noticed Marcus sitting in the back corner, though he had no official role in the conference planning. I presented my case, confidently answering questions with data-backed responses. The budget was approved, though, at 15% less than I had requested. A challenge, but not insurmountable. As weeks passed, I noticed subtle shifts in the office dynamics. Marcus began appearing at meetings he hadn't been invited to, offering to help with aspects of the conference that were already well under control. Diana became increasingly distant, often redirecting my questions to Victor, who seemed to take a special interest in the conference, despite having many other responsibilities. "Be careful," Rachel told me over lunch one day. Victor brought several people from Nexus with him, and rumor has it, he promised positions to a few more who haven't made the jump yet. I nodded, filing away the information while focusing on my work. The conference was my priority. not office gossip. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the warning signs, but my dedication to making the event successful blinded me to the political maneuvering happening behind the scenes. Every night I drove home late, my dining table transforming into conference central, covered with floor plans, speaker bios, and marketing materials. My boyfriend Tom was understanding but concerned about the hours I was putting in. It's just until after the conference, I assured him, though we both knew this level of commitment was becoming a pattern rather than an exception. What I didn't tell Tom was how personal this had become. It wasn't just about proving myself professionally anymore. The Tech Vision Summit had become my vision for what corporate events could be meaningful, not just flashy, educational, not just promotional, connection building, not just networking. I was determined to transform not just the event, but the entire concept of what a technology conference could achieve. Little did I know that while I was reimagining the conference, others were reimagining my role in it. The 6 months leading up to the Tech Vision Summit were the most intensive of my professional life. I approached the planning methodically, breaking the massive project into manageable components: venue, speakers, content marketing, logistics, and attendee experience. The venue was my first victory. The previous year's conference had been held at the Conventional Center downtown, a perfectly adequate but uninspiring location. I negotiated with 3 different venues before securing the newly renovated Lakeside Convention Center. Not only was it more visually stunning with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, but I managed to secure it for 15% less than the previous year's venue by agreeing to a multi-year contract and shifting our dates by just 2 days. Securing speakers proved more challenging. The industry's memory of last year's disorganized event made many potential presenters hesitant. I personally called 20 high-profile executives, technology innovators, and thought leaders, often spending hours addressing their concerns and outlining my vision for the revamped conference. The breakthrough came when I convinced Alan Stone to deliver our keynote address. Alan was practically a celebrity in the technology world, known for his charismatic presentations and visionary ideas about artificial intelligence. His company, Stone Innovations, had recently developed a groundbreaking natural language processing system that was revolutionizing customer service across multiple industries. "I'll be honest, Johanna," he told me during our video call. "I turned down Horizon last year. Your predecessor was disorganized and couldn't articulate why I should give up 2 days of my time." "I understand your hesitation," I replied. "But this year's summit isn't just about Horizon showcasing products. We're facilitating genuine conversations about where technology is heading and the responsibility we all have in shaping that future. Your voice is crucial to that conversation." After an hour discussing specific topics and format, he agreed. "You've convinced me. But I'm trusting you personally on this, Johanna. I'll need direct communication with you throughout the process." With Alan confirmed, other speakers quickly followed. I created a diverse lineup representing various sectors of the technology industry, different demographic backgrounds, and contrasting viewpoints. The agenda took shape: panel discussions on ethical AI development workshops, on sustainable technology roundtables, on privacy concerns in a connected world. To distinguish our conference from dozens of similar events, I developed innovative networking formats. Instead of the usual awkward mingling over coffee, I designed structured interaction sessions based on shared professional challenges. I created a solution exchange where attendees could present specific technical problems and receive input from peers. Every aspect was designed to deliver genuine value rather than just collecting business cards. End of section. Every aspect was designed to deliver genuine value. I collaborated with our development team to create a mobile app for attendee engagement. The app would allow participants to customize their schedule, provide feedback in real time, connect with relevant contacts based on their interests, and access presentation materials. This required countless hours working with our technology team, testing functionalities, and ensuring user-friendliness. The app development revealed the first serious tension with Marcus. During a progress review, he suggested scrapping several key features to streamline the user experience. These features are essential for the personalized experience we're promising attendees, I explained. Victor thinks we should focus on simplicity, Marcus countered, though I had never heard this directly from Victor. I stood my ground, and the app proceeded as planned, but I noticed Marcus taking detailed notes throughout the meeting. The next week, in a company-wide email about the conference, Victor praised the innovative app concept developed through collaboration between the events and marketing teams. Marcus was specifically mentioned. I was not. As weeks passed, this pattern repeated. Ideas I presented in meetings with Diana would appear in company communications as joint initiatives with marketing with Marcus, positioned as a key contributor. Diana became increasingly unavailable, canceling our check-ins or sending brief emails instead of having actual conversations. Rachel tried to warn me again over lunch. Marcus has been having private meetings with Victor, she said. And I overheard something about restructuring conference leadership. You need to protect yourself. With what I asked, I'm doing the work. The results will speak for themselves. Rachel shook her head. Sometimes the work doesn't speak as loudly as the politics. I dismissed her concerns and pushed forward. My days began at 6 a.m. with vendor calls and often ended past midnight finalizing details. I negotiated with caterers, coordinated with audiovisual teams, arranged transportation for VIP speakers, and obsessed over every detail from the color of the lanyards to the positioning of the sponsor booths. 3 months before the event, Victor began expressing vague dissatisfaction in leadership meetings. I'm concerned about the conference direction, he would say, without specifying what exactly concerned him. When pressed for details, he would mention alignment with brand messaging or executive visibility opportunities without concrete examples. Diana, once my advocate, now nodded along with Victor's nebulous concerns. After one particularly frustrating meeting, I cornered her in the hallway. If there are specific issues with my planning, I need to know, I said. Victor just has a different vision, she replied, not meeting my eyes. Try to be flexible. I've been flexible, but I can't address concerns if I don't know what they are. She glanced around nervously. Just keep Marcus in the loop on everything, okay? It will make things easier. I complied, copying Marcus on emails and inviting him to planning meetings, though he rarely contributed anything substantial. He would ask basic questions that revealed his limited understanding of event logistics, yet speak with authority when Victor was present. Despite these challenges, the conference took shape. Registrations exceeded projections by 30%. Industry publications began publishing preview articles about our speaker lineup and innovative format. Several competitors reached out asking if we would consider partnership opportunities for next year. The final weeks were a blur of confirmations, last-minute adjustments, and contingency planning. I created detailed run of show documents, emergency response protocols, and comprehensive briefing packets for all staff members. My apartment became a staging area for conference materials, promotional items, and backup supplies for anything that might go wrong. The night before the conference, I did a final walkthrough of the venue with the facility manager. The main hall was transformed with elegant lighting, comfortable seating, arranged to facilitate conversation, and technology displays, positioned to create a natural flow through the space. Seeing my vision materialized after months of planning brought tears to my eyes. Everything looks perfect, the facility manager said. You've thought of everything. I went home exhausted, but proud, setting 3 alarms to ensure I'd be at the venue by 5 the next morning. 2 hours before the first staff were scheduled to arrive, and 4 hours before doors opened to attendees. As I fell asleep, I had no idea that the months of work, thousands of decisions, and countless personal sacrifices were about to be undermined in a single moment. I arrived at the Lakeside Convention Center at exactly 5 a.m, travel mug of coffee in one hand, detailed agenda in the other. The sky was still dark, streetlights reflecting on the lake beside the venue. A security guard greeted me at the staff entrance, and I felt a flutter of excitement. Today was the day everything would come together. The exhibition hall looked even more impressive than it had the night before. Overnight, the technical team had completed the lighting installation, bathing the space in a warm glow that highlighted the Horizon Technologies branding without being overwhelming. The registration area was set up with 8 stations, each equipped with tablets connected to our check-in system. Sponsor booths lined the perimeter, while the central area featured comfortable seating clusters for networking. I walked through, methodically checking each detail against my list. The speaker green room was stocked with refreshments and equipped with the requested technical capabilities. The main stage audio-visual system was being tested by the technical director. Even the coffee stations were perfectly positioned to prevent congestion during breaks. By 6:30, staff began arriving. I briefed the registration team, distributed communication devices to key personnel, and checked in with security about VIP protocols. Everything was running according to plan until 7:45, when I headed to the main entrance to oversee final preparations for attendee arrival. A different security guard stood at the entrance, checking a tablet against the badges he was distributing. I approached, ready to do a final verification of the check-in system. "Good morning," I said, reaching for my conference director badge in my bag. "Morning, ma'am. Are you an attendee?" the guard asked. "I'm the conference director," I replied, presenting my company ID. Johanna Lewis. He checked his tablet, scrolling through what I knew was the attendee list I had finalized myself just 2 days ago. "I don't see you on the list," he said with a frown. "That's impossible. I organized this entire conference," I explained, remaining calm despite the first prickle of concern. "There must be a system error. Can you check the staff list?" He tapped a few more times on his tablet. "No Johanna Lewis on any list, ma'am. I can call my supervisor." As the guard reached for his radio, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Problem, Johanna." I turned to see Marcus approaching, immaculately dressed in a suit I hadn't seen before, carrying a conference director badge identical to the one I should have been wearing. He held 2 coffee cups, offering one to me with an expression of exaggerated sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. "There seems to be a mistake," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I'm not on the attendee list, apparently." "Oh, that's not a mistake," Marcus replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "Last-minute decision from management. Victor thought it would be better if I took lead today. Something about aligning the conference messaging more closely with marketing objectives." The guard looked uncomfortably between us. "So she's not approved to enter." "Miss Lewis isn't on the approved list," no Marcus confirmed. "But we can issue her a visitor badge if she wants to attend." He turned to me with that same fake, sympathetic smile. "You put in a lot of work, Johanna. You should at least get to see how it turns out." My hands began to shake, and I clasped them tightly together to hide it. Several staff members were watching now, along with a few early arriving attendees. The public humiliation was clearly part of the plan. I reached for my phone to call Diana, but the call went straight to voicemail. As I was debating my next move, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "They did what? That's illegal. Don't sign anything. Call me as soon as possible." My mind raced through options. I could make a scene, demand to speak with Victor, refuse to leave. But what would that accomplish? Creating a disruption at the entrance would only damage the conference experience for attendees who had paid thousands of dollars and traveled from across the country to be here. It would make me look unprofessional and potentially burn bridges in an industry where reputation was everything. Marcus held out a visitor badge attached to a standard gray lanyard, nothing like the blue VIP lanyards I had selected for speakers and staff. "You can still watch from the back," he offered, loud enough for others to hear his generosity. In that moment, I saw everything clearly. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This had been planned for weeks, perhaps months. The gradual freezing out Diana's avoidance, Victor's vague criticisms. They had waited until the very last moment, when all the hard work was done, when everything was in place, to push me aside and let Marcus take credit for my creation. The unfairness of it burned in my chest, and I felt my face flushing with a combination of anger and humiliation. 6 months of my life, countless nights and weekends, sacrificed relationships strained because of my dedication to this event. all of it apparently meant nothing to the company I had given so much to. I looked at the visitor badge in Marcus's outstretched hand. A visitor. To the conference that existed because of my vision, my planning, my relationships. The conference where Alan Stone had agreed to speak specifically because of his trust in me. "No thank you," I said finally, my voice surprisingly steady. "I think I'll pass." I turned and walked out of the convention center. My steps measured and deliberate, despite the turmoil inside me. Only when I reached my car in the parking garage did I allow the tears to come gripping the steering wheel as sobs shook my body. After a few minutes, I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. The initial shock was wearing off, and another emotion was taking its place: determination. They might have banned me from the physical space of the conference, but they hadn't considered what that meant. In their eagerness to sideline me, they had overlooked something crucial. I wasn't just the face of the conference. I was its architect, its repository of information, its relationship hub. I had spent 6 months building this event from the ground up. I knew every speaker personally. I had the contact information for every vendor in my phone. I was the administrator for the conference app. I knew which sponsors needed special attention and which speakers required specific technical setups. I knew that the air conditioning in the East Hall needed to be adjusted manually if the room became too crowded. I knew that the catering team had prepared an alternative menu for the 23 attendees with dietary restrictions. All of this knowledge lived in my head and my carefully organized digital files. Marcus might have a shiny conference director badge, but he didn't have the information he needed to make this event succeed. As this realization settled over me, my phone rang. It was Alan Stone. I had a decision to make. I answered Alan's call, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotional storm I was weathering. "Johanna, where are you? I just arrived at the venue and was told to check in with someone named Marcus. I thought you were running this conference." Alan sounded confused and slightly irritated. "Alan, I need to be completely honest with you," I said, deciding in that moment that transparency was my only ethical option. "I've just been informed that I've been removed from the conference leadership. It was a last-minute decision that I wasn't consulted about." "What? That makes no sense. You're the reason I agreed to speak at this event." "I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for the confusion. The company has decided to go in a different direction with the leadership." I kept my explanation professional, resisting the urge to disparage Horizon Technologies despite my feelings. "Well, this is highly unprofessional. I made commitments based on my conversations with you specifically." Alan's voice had the edge that had made him famous for holding companies accountable for their actions. "I understand your frustration. You should do whatever you feel is appropriate given this change in circumstances." I was careful not to explicitly suggest he withdraw, though the implication hung in the air. "I need to think about this," he said. "I'll be in touch." After ending the call, I sat in my car considering my options. The betrayal still stung sharply, but I needed to think strategically. What were my responsibilities in this situation? To the company that had just pushed me aside? To the speakers and vendors who had made commitments based on their relationship with me? To myself and my professional integrity? I opened my laptop and connected to my hotspot. First, I logged into the conference management system. As I suspected, I still had administrator access. They had removed me from the building but forgotten to revoke my digital permissions. I could see the real-time updates attendees checking in the system, assigning them to sessions based on their preferences. I could have sabotaged everything in that moment. A few keystrokes could have reset the entire registration system or scrambled the room assignments. I could have canceled the catering orders or changed the AV specifications. The power to create chaos was literally at my fingertips, but that wasn't who I was. Professional sabotage, however, justified it might feel, in the moment, would ultimately damage my reputation as much as theirs. It would harm innocent attendees who had traveled far and paid good money to attend. It would hurt the speakers who had prepared presentations and the vendors who had allocated resources. Instead, I decided on a different approach: radical transparency. I crafted a carefully worded email addressed to all speakers, vendors, and key stakeholders. The subject line read, "Emergency Notice regarding TechVision Summit Leadership Change." In the body, I wrote, "Dear Valued Partners, I'm writing to inform you that effective this morning, I am no longer overseeing the TechVision Summit. This decision was made by Horizon Technologies management without prior notice to me or to my knowledge to any of our partners. Marcus Palmer from the marketing department has been appointed to take over conference management. For continuity of operations, please direct all questions and concerns to him at email address or through the conference staff on site. For those with whom I've made specific arrangements or commitments, I sincerely apologize for any disruption this may cause. This change was not anticipated in our previous communications. I have greatly valued our professional relationship and the trust you placed in me throughout the planning process. Sincerely, Johanna Lewis, former TechVision Summit Director." I triple-checked the wording to ensure it contained only factual statements without emotional language or disparagement. Then I added the legal department to the BCC field and pressed send. Next, I opened the Conference App Administration panel. As the primary administrator, I had access to the direct messaging feature that allowed communications to all registered attendees and speakers. I composed a similar notification for the speakers, informing them of the leadership change and providing Marcus's contact information. I wasn't trying to sabotage the conference. I was simply ensuring that everyone had accurate information about who was now in charge, while documenting the abrupt transition for my own protection. If speakers chose to withdraw or vendors decided to reconfirm their arrangements, those were their independent decisions based on factual information. After sending these communications, I shut my laptop and decided to go home. There was nothing more I could ethically do, and sitting in the parking garage was only prolonging my distress. I needed space to process what had happened and consider my next career steps. As I drove away from the convention center, my phone began vibrating constantly with incoming calls and messages. I connected it to my car's Bluetooth to hear a voicemail from Alan Stone. "Johanna, I've just received your email. This is completely unacceptable. I've informed the staff that I won't be delivering the keynote under these circumstances. I've worked with Marcus in the past at another event, and I don't have confidence in his ability to execute at the level you promised. Call me when you can." Another notification showed an email from Patricia Wong, the CEO of a major software company who was scheduled to participate in the afternoon panel discussion. "Just received your notice. My participation was contingent on working with you specifically, as outlined in our agreement. We'll be contacting Horizon Legal Department." Text messages from several vendors began appearing, asking for confirmation about payment authorizations and last-minute changes that Marcus had apparently been trying to implement without understanding the existing arrangements. A message from Rachel appeared. "Victor is furious. What did you do? He's been behind closed doors with Diana and legal for the last 20 minutes. I felt a momentary surge of satisfaction followed by concern. I hadn't intended to create chaos, only to inform relevant parties of the change in leadership. But it seemed that my simple act of transparent communication was having significant ripple effects. Rather than continuing to watch the notifications pour in, I decided to take care of myself. This had been a traumatic professional experience, and I needed time to process it. I turned off my phone completely, something I hadn't done in months, perhaps years. When I arrived home, I ran a bath with the lavender bath salts I'd been saving for a special occasion. I poured myself a glass of wine, even though it was barely 10 in the morning. As I sank into the warm water, I allowed myself to feel all the emotions I'd been suppressing. Anger, betrayal, humiliation, but also relief. The crushing pressure of the conference was no longer my responsibility. I thought about my career, about whether I wanted to continue at Horizon Technologies after this betrayal. I thought about Marcus and Victor, wondering if they realized yet what they had done, not just to me, but to the conference itself. I thought about Diana, who had failed to stand up for me when it mattered. Mostly, I thought about the lessons I was learning through this painful experience, about workplace politics, about documentation, about the importance of building direct relationships, and about maintaining dignity, even when treated unfairly. After my bath, I made myself lunch and caught up on the personal tasks I'd been neglecting for months while focusing on the conference. I cleaned my apartment, called my mother, and even managed to take a nap. It was the first time in 6 months that I had nothing urgent demanding my attention. But I knew this peace was temporary. Eventually, I would need to turn my phone back on and face whatever professional storm awaited me. 3 hours after turning off my phone, I decided it was time to face reality. I took a deep breath and powered it back on, bracing myself for the aftermath. The device vibrated continuously for nearly a full minute as notifications flooded in. 27 missed calls, 45 text messages, countless emails with urgent subject lines. My voicemail was full. I started with the most recent voicemail, which was from Diana, my supervisor, who had been avoiding me for weeks. "Johanna, this is Diana. I need you to call me immediately. There are some issues at the conference. Victor is. Just call me back as soon as you get this. It's extremely urgent." Her voice sounded panicked, nothing like her usual controlled tone. I scrolled through my text messages next. Rachel had sent several updates. Multiple speakers are no-shows. Alan Stone publicly announced he withdrew because of unethical management changes. Marcus is completely overwhelmed. He can't answer basic questions about the schedule. Attendees are demanding refunds because the app stopped working properly. Victor just had a very public argument with the AV company, who say they never received final payment authorization. The catering is wrong. Apparently, Marcus told them to change everything this morning. I opened Twitter and searched for the conference hashtag. Attendees were posting in real time. At Horizon Tech Conference is a disaster. 2 hours in, and still no keynote speaker. Number Tech Vision Summit. Number Tech Vision fail. Came all the way from Seattle for Number Tech Vision Summit, and half the speakers are no-shows. What's going on at Horizon Tech? Anyone know why the conference app keeps crashing? Can't even see the updated schedule. Number Tech Vision Summit. I found a live stream of the conference that one of the technology blogs was running. The camera showed Marcus on stage, his perfect composure, now visibly frayed, trying to explain to a room full of frustrated attendees that there would be slight adjustments to the program. "We're working to confirm some alternative speakers," he was saying, tugging at his collar. The original keynote had a scheduling conflict, but we have some exciting alternatives in the works." The camera panned to the audience, where people were looking at their phones, whispering to each other, and some were actually walking out. Another text came in from Rachel. "CEO Gloria Hamilton is here. She just arrived and she does not look happy." Victor's trying to explain what happened. While I was absorbing all this information, my phone rang. It was a number I recognized immediately: Gloria Hamilton, the CEO of Horizon Technologies. I had only spoken with her directly a few times in my tenure at the company, usually at large corporate events where our interactions were brief and ceremonial. I answered, trying to sound professional despite the turmoil of the situation. "This is Johanna. Johanna, this is Gloria Hamilton. I need you at headquarters immediately. Can you be here in 30 minutes? Her tone left no room for negotiation, but I wasn't about to rush into what could be a termination meeting without preparation. "I can be there in an hour," I replied calmly. "I'll need to gather some materials first." There was a pause, then. "Fine. 1 hour. My office." She hung up without further discussion. I spent the next 45 minutes gathering documentation emails, showing the planning process, signed agreements with speakers, specifically naming me as their contact vendor, contracts, the approved budget, and actual expenditures, showing how I'd saved the company money and screenshots of the positive press coverage the conference had generated before today's disaster. I also printed the email removing me from the conference, careful to include the metadata showing it had been sent from Marcus's account at 4:30 that morning, proving the decision had been made well in advance despite being presented as last minute. As I drove to the corporate headquarters, I prepared myself mentally for termination. Despite the unfairness of the situation, I recognized that corporations often close ranks when mistakes are made. It would be easier for them to make me the scapegoat than admit that Victor and Marcus had sabotaged their own conference. When I arrived, the receptionist immediately directed me to the executive floor. Through the glass walls of the conference room adjacent to Gloria's office, I could see a heated discussion underway. Marcus and Victor were gesturing emphatically while Diana sat looking miserable. Gloria stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, expression thunderous. As I approached, the receptionist buzzed me in, and Gloria stepped out of the conference room. "Johanna, come with me," she said, leading me into her private office and closing the door. She took a seat behind her desk and gestured for me to sit across from her. "I've spent the last 2 hours trying to understand how our most important industry event of the year has turned into a complete disaster." She began, her voice measured, but with an undercurrent of barely contained anger. "Care to give me your perspective?" I took a deep breath and responded calmly. "This morning, when I arrived at the venue, I was informed by security that I was not on the approved list to enter. Marcus Palmer told me it was a last-minute management decision to have him lead the conference instead of me. Since I was given no prior notice of this change and offered no explanation, I left the venue." And then Gloria prompted. "Then I sent a factual notification to speakers, vendors, and stakeholders, informing them of the change in leadership. I provided Marcus's contact information and encouraged them to direct their questions to him." "That's all you did?" "Sent an informational email." "Yes. I felt those with whom I had built relationships over 6 months of planning deserved to know that I was no longer their point of contact." Gloria leaned back in her chair, studying me intently. "Victor claims you deliberately sabotaged the conference by telling speakers to withdraw and instructing vendors to withhold services." I opened my folder and placed a copy of the exact email I had sent on her desk. "This is the complete text of my communication. As you can see, I made no such requests." She read it carefully, then looked up. "Then why are speakers withdrawing? Why are vendors creating problems?" "I can't speak for them, but many of the agreements were made with me personally. The speakers trusted my vision for the conference, and the vendors trusted my management of the logistics. Removing me without notice or transition planning created a significant disruption in those relationships." Gloria was quiet for a moment, then pressed an intercom button. "Send them in." The door opened, and Victor, Marcus, and Diana filed in looking tense. "Mr. Reeves," Gloria addressed Victor formally, "Johanna has provided a copy of the email she sent this morning. There's nothing in it that constitutes sabotage or inappropriate communication." Victor's face reddened. The timing was deliberately calculated to cause maximum disruption. "The timing?" Gloria raised an eyebrow. "You mean immediately after being informed without any notice that she was banned from an event she spent 6 months planning? What timing would have been convenient for you?" Victor faltered and Marcus jumped in. "She should have provided a proper handover of information. I've been trying to locate basic details about speaker requirements and vendor arrangements all morning." "Interesting," Gloria replied coldly. "When exactly did you request this information from Johanna? Was it before or after you sent security to turn her away at the door?" Marcus looked at Victor, who remained silent. Diana finally spoke up. "I was directed to exclude Johanna from planning meetings for the past 3 weeks. Victor said it was to prepare for a transition." Gloria turned to her. "And you didn't think to mention this to me? An executive decision to replace the leader of our most visible industry event weeks before it happened." "Victor said it came from you," Diana admitted, not meeting Gloria's eyes. The CEO's expression hardened further. She turned back to me. Johanna, I'm going to be direct. The Tech Vision Summit is currently imploding. Alan Stone has publicly withdrawn. 2 other keynote speakers have followed his lead. The schedule is in shambles, attendees are demanding refunds, and the press is having a field day with hashtags like Tech Vision Fail trending on social media. Can this be salvaged? I considered my response carefully. With immediate intervention, yes. The relationships I built with speakers and vendors were based on trust and mutual respect. If those relationships can be reaffirmed, many of the issues could be resolved. By you. Yes, by me, with your full authority to make necessary decisions and commitments. Gloria stood up. Then let's not waste any more time. You are reinstated as conference director, effective immediately with expanded authority as needed to resolve this situation. She turned to the others. We'll discuss how this happened and the consequences later. Right now, we need to focus on damage control. Victor began to protest, but Gloria cut him off. Not another word, Victor. Your judgment in this matter has been catastrophically poor. You've put millions of dollars of company revenue and our industry reputation at risk. I suggest you focus on how you're going to explain that to the board next week. As we prepared to leave for the convention center, Gloria pulled me aside. I owe you an apology, Johanna. This should never have happened. Fix this conference and we'll talk about your future at Horizon afterward. I nodded, already mentally formulating a recovery plan. The betrayal still stung, but there was a certain satisfaction in being called back to rescue the very event I had been barred from attending just hours earlier. As we walked out, Rachel was waiting by the elevator. She gave me a subtle thumbs up and whispered, I knew they'd need you back as we passed. I allowed myself a small smile. The day wasn't over yet, and there was still a conference to save. We arrived at the Lakeside Convention Center to find a scene of barely controlled chaos. The main exhibition hall, which should have been bustling with engaged attendees, was instead filled with small groups of people looking at their phones and talking among themselves. The sponsor booth stood largely unattended, and the schedule displays showed updates pending for most of the afternoon sessions. Gloria Hamilton marched directly to the conference operations room, where Marcus was attempting to coordinate with the increasingly frustrated staff. His perfect hair was now disheveled, his designer suit jacket discarded, and his expression one of barely concealed panic. Attention, everyone, Gloria announced, her authoritative voice immediately silencing the room. There has been a communication error regarding conference leadership. Johanna Lewis is reinstated as Executive Director of Corporate Events, effective immediately with full authority over all aspects of the Tech Vision Summit. All decisions now run through her. Marcus's face cycled through several emotions: shock, anger, humiliation, and finally resignation. He gathered his notes without making eye contact with anyone, and moved to leave the room. Marcus, I said, stopping him. I need a complete briefing on what's happened so far today and what changes you've implemented. He looked to Victor, who had followed us into the room but found no support there. Victor was staring at his phone, already distancing himself from the situation. Fine, Marcus muttered and proceeded to outline a morning of cascading failures. Alan Stone's withdrawal had triggered a domino effect of speaker cancellations. The catering company was threatening to leave after Marcus had demanded last-minute menu changes without understanding the contractual obligations. The conference app had crashed multiple times because he had instructed the tech team to push updates without proper testing. After getting as much information as possible, I turned to the operations team. I need the current status of all speakers, an updated attendee count, and a list of all vendor issues. Let's meet back here in 15 minutes. As the team dispersed, I pulled out my phone and made the most important call first. Alan, it's Johanna. I've been reinstated with expanded authority and the full backing of our CEO, who's on site with me now. That's quite a turnaround, he replied, sounding both surprised and impressed. The situation this morning was unauthorized and has been corrected. I personally apologize for the disruption and understand completely if you're unable to return. But if there's any possibility, What time would you need me? Relief washed over me. Originally, you were scheduled for 10, but we could adjust to a closing keynote at 4 if that works better for you. For you, Johanna, I'll make it work. Text me the details. One by one, I contacted the other speakers who had withdrawn or were considering doing so. My straightforward explanation of the situation combined with the personal relationships I had built over months of planning convinced most to return. 3 couldn't rearrange their schedules after having made other commitments, but the majority agreed to participate. Next, I met with the vendor representatives who were threatening to walk out. The catering company had been particularly offended by Marcus's approach, but when I explained the situation and offered additional compensation for their flexibility, they agreed to proceed with the original plans. The technical director was more challenging. My team has been given 3 different sets of instructions this morning, he complained. We can't keep reconfiguring the entire system. I understand your frustration, I acknowledged. From this moment forward, all instructions will come directly from me or someone I specifically designate. Here's what we need to make the afternoon and tomorrow successful. We worked together to develop a simplified technical plan that would meet the essential requirements while minimizing further changes. I authorized overtime pay for his team, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances. By noon, we had a revised schedule for the remainder of Day 1 and a plan to fully restore the original programming for Day 2. The conference app was functioning again, and attendees received notifications about the updated agenda, along with an apologetic message from Gloria, who wisely took responsibility without going into the embarrassing details. I made a point of personally visiting each sponsor booth, thanking them for their patience and ensuring they had everything they needed to make their investment worthwhile. Many expressed relief at seeing me back in charge, having been confused by the morning's disorganization. The most awkward moment came when I encountered Marcus near the speaker preparation room. He was clearing out his temporary office expression dark. I didn't sabotage anything, Marcus, I said quietly. I simply told the truth. He looked up, anger briefly flashing across his face before settling into a grudging respect. I underestimated how much of this conference was built on your personal relationships, he admitted. Victor promised me it would be seamless. No transition is seamless without proper handover, I replied, especially one done in secret. He nodded slightly, then gathered his things and left without another word. Diana approached me later, her usual confidence replaced with evident discomfort. Johanna the First. I should have warned you. Victor pressured me to cooperate, implied my own position was at risk if I didn't. You had choices, I replied, not interested in absolving her completely. We always have choices. I know, I'm sorry. She seemed genuinely regretful. What can I do to help now? I assigned her to manage the registration area where her organizational skills could be useful without requiring us to work closely together. Trust would need to be rebuilt slowly, if at all. Victor maintained his distance throughout the day, making himself scarce, except when Gloria specifically required his presence. His authority had been publicly undermined, and he seemed to be strategically avoiding further damage. The remainder of the first day was far from perfect, but it was functional. Attendees who had been ready to demand refunds in the morning were cautiously re-engaging with the revised program. The afternoon sessions proceeded without major technical issues, and the networking reception in the evening generated the buzz of conversation that marks a successful event. I worked through the night with a dedicated team to reorganize Day 2. We confirmed all speaker arrangements, personally contacting each one. We reviewed all technical requirements and simplified where possible to reduce risk. We reorganized the schedule to highlight the strongest remaining content while creating a coherent narrative flow. When I finally went home at 2 a.m, exhausted but satisfied with our recovery plan, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Day 2 of the conference was remarkably different. The chaos of the first day had been replaced with smooth operations and positive energy. Alan Stone's closing keynote was standing room only, and he graciously mentioned my exemplary leadership through challenging circumstances in his introduction. Attendee feedback forms showed a fascinating split: complaints about the first morning followed by praise for the recovery. Many commented specifically on the transparent communication and responsive adjustments, turning what could have been a complete disaster into a demonstration of effective crisis management. The media coverage reflected this narrative arc as well. Technology blogs that had begun the day with scathing tweets about TechVision fail were now publishing articles with titles like Horizon Tech's Remarkable Conference Recovery and Crisis Management Masterclass at TechVision Summit. After the final session concluded and attendees began departing, Gloria called me to her temporary office at the venue. "Preliminary numbers," she said, sliding a tablet across the desk to me. Despite the rocky start, attendee satisfaction scores for the overall conference were only 12% below last year's event, and 90% expressed interest in returning next year. "Given where we were at 10 this morning, this is nothing short of miraculous," Gloria acknowledged. "You've demonstrated exceptional leadership under pressure." "Thank you," I replied simply. "I've made some decisions," she continued. "Marcus is being transferred to our West Coast office effective next week. Victor's oversight of events and conferences has been revoked. Those functions will now report directly to me until we determine a more permanent structure." I nodded, waiting for the implications for my own position. "I'd like to formalize your new role as Executive Director of Corporate Events with an expanded team and budget. You'll have autonomy to restructure the department as you see fit." She named a salary figure that represented a 30% increase over my current compensation. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully. "I'd like some time to consider it." Gloria looked surprised. She wasn't used to having her generous offers met with hesitation. "Of course. Take the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday." As the operations team completed the conference breakdown and vendors began removing their equipment, I felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in the recovery we had achieved, lingering anger at the betrayal, satisfaction in the professional, vindication and uncertainty about my future at a company where such a situation had been allowed to develop. What I did know with certainty was that I had discovered my own strength through this ordeal, and whatever I decided about my next steps, that knowledge would serve me well. 6 months passed, and I found myself once again planning the TechVision Summit, though under very different circumstances. After careful consideration, I had accepted the executive director position Gloria offered, but with specific conditions: complete autonomy over my department, a dedicated budget that couldn't be reallocated without my approval, and direct reporting to the CEO rather than through intermediate management. The company landscape had shifted significantly. Victor had pursued other opportunities 2 months after the conference debacle corporate speak for being asked to resign. Marcus remained at the West Coast office, our paths rarely crossing except on company-wide video calls where we maintained professional but distant courtesy. Diana and I had slowly rebuilt a working relationship, though never returning to the friendly rapport we once had. She had apologized multiple times, and while I accepted her apologies, verbally, trust was slower to return. We collaborated effectively on projects when necessary, but without the easy camaraderie of before. Rachel had accepted my offer to join the events team as operations director, bringing her straightforward approach and institutional knowledge to our planning processes. "At least now I can watch your back officially," she had joked when accepting the position. The planning for the next TechVision Summit was proceeding smoothly with unprecedented support from leadership. My expanded team included specialists in speaker relations, technical production, and attendee experience. The budget had been increased by 20%, acknowledging both the previous year's challenges and the strategic importance of the event. Alan Stone had already confirmed his participation for the second consecutive year, this time bringing several colleagues from his innovation lab to conduct workshops. "Only for you, Johanna," he had said when signing the agreement. "You've earned my loyalty." That phrase resonated deeply with me, earning loyalty. Through the crucible of last year's conference disaster, I had learned profound lessons about professional relationships, workplace politics, and personal resilience. I had learned that documentation isn't just administrative busywork, but essential protection in corporate environments. Every email, every contract, every decision was now recorded with careful attention to detail, not out of paranoia, but from wisdom born of experience. I had learned about the importance of building genuine relationships based on trust and mutual respect. The speakers and vendors who returned to salvage last year's conference hadn't done so because of contractual obligations, but because of their personal connections with me. I now invested time in maintaining those relationships throughout the year, not just during active planning periods. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned about setting boundaries. My new role came with greater responsibility, but I no longer allowed work to consume my entire life. I had regular dinner dates with friends, weekend trips with my boyfriend Tom, now fiancé, and even took up painting as a stress-relieving hobby. The industry had taken notice of our remarkable recovery as well. Last month, I had accepted the Innovation in Events Management Award at the annual Industry Excellence Gala, acknowledging our team's creative approach to crisis management and subsequent organizational improvements. My professional reputation had not only survived but thrived. I regularly received speaking invitations to share insights about resilient event planning and transparent leadership during crises. Recruitment firms occasionally reached out with intriguing opportunities at other companies, which I politely declined for now, but kept as potential future options. At the company holiday party in December, I had a brief encounter with Marcus, who was in town for quarterly meetings. After awkward small talk about the weather and the buffet selection, he had said something unexpected. "You know, I learned a lot from what happened with the conference," he admitted, swirling the ice in his drink. "I thought success was about positioning and perception. You showed it's actually about competence and relationships." I had nodded, accepting the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from him. We all learn our lessons differently. Looking back now, I could see how close I had come to professional destruction that day. If I had responded emotionally rather than strategically, if I had given in to the temptation to sabotage rather than simply communicate truthfully, if I had burned bridges rather than preserved relationships, the outcome would have been entirely different. The experience had transformed my approach to workplace challenges. I no longer feared office politics, but understood how to navigate them without compromising my integrity. I recognized the difference between controlling situations impossible and controlling my responses to them essential. I appreciated the power of transparency as both a practical tool and an ethical compass. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was the confidence I now carried. Having survived and ultimately thrived after such a public professional betrayal, I no longer worried excessively about others' perception or approval. I knew my value both to myself and to the organization. As I finalized the speaker lineup for the upcoming summit, my phone buzzed with a notification. The event registration had just opened, and within 30 minutes, we had already reached 40% of our total attendee capacity from the previous year. Clearly, our reputation had not only recovered, but strengthened. I smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had seemed so devastating in the moment had ultimately become the catalyst for the most significant growth of my career. By removing me from the conference, they had inadvertently revealed just how essential I truly was. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting back or getting revenge. Sometimes simply stepping aside and letting the truth speak for itself is all the justice you need. Have you ever faced betrayal in your workplace? How did you handle it? Was there a time when you had to choose between emotional reaction and strategic response? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might be facing their own workplace challenges right now. Remember, sometimes our biggest professional setbacks can become our greatest opportunities for growth. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.